you're discussing the differences between Satan and Lucifer. What was it? Satan and Lucifer, right?
Yeah.
And now, the many misconceptions about both of them.
Yeah.
And a lot of people really, really don't know the differences, and really don't know them, period.
Yeah, most people, there's no difference, right?
Yeah.
Like, I've asked people what they think Lucifer is, just random people, and a lot of people say that was the angelic name of Satan before he fell. And that's kind of how they justify the fact that Lucifer means something good, right?
Yeah.
Means bringer of light. They're like, well, why would the devil be called that? Well, that was what his name was before he fell, right?
Yeah.
I guess it kind of works, in some way. That reality tunnel, I guess you could call it. There's some interesting things about that version of the myth, the folkloric version of the myth that's kind of taken over the mainstream consciousness. But for a long time, Lucifer and Satan didn't mean the same thing. Like, even to Christians, it was used as a term for Venus, actually, in the morning, when you see it as the last bright object in the night sky before the sun rises, right? It kind of heralds the rising of the sun, like it calls it or brings it forth. It's the bringer of the light.
Yeah,
right?
that's from the Latin word luciferus.
Right. If you look into the symbolism of the word, light, since time immemorial, has meant knowledge or awareness. So bringing the light is like the force of enlightenment, or the God form of that enlightenment energy, I guess you could call it, right? Or illumination, the revelation, right? Or epiphany, you could say. That eureka moment, personified into a God form. Whereas the word Satan literally means adversary, right?
Yeah.
So it's specifically in rebellion against them. It's a very generic term that could mean a lot of different things, and a lot of people interpret it different ways. But a lot of people think of it as the ultimate adversary against God. Even that's not historically correct. That's something that developed later, because originally Satan worked for God, right? In the Bible, that where it comes from. The word Lucifer isn't even in the Bible, except for when you get a Latin translation of the Bible. That's where the first time Lucifer appears in the Bible, is because they decided to translate certain words into the Latin word Lucifer, like in Isaiah, for example. But you know what? That's the only place you see the word Lucifer untranslated from the Latin into the English, is in the King James version of the Bible, which they translated from the Latin, which wasn't what it was originally written. But when they decided to translate it in English, they, in that passage in Isaiah, where it talks about him falling, and it's referring to Nebuchadnezzar, right? And being egotistical and wanting to take the throne of heaven, and falling, right? It was kind of an allegory for something that happens in the sky, as well as referring to Nebuchadnezzar at the time and criticizing him. In that passage, the translators of the King James Version of the Bible decided not to translate that into English and leave it from the Latin that they were using as their primary source, untranslated. But that word Lucifer occurs in the Latin version of the Bible in several places, but they translate it into something else, into English, in every other case. There's one in the second book of Peter, and if they had left it untranslated, it would have read something along the lines of, before you have your own revelations, you have to rely on the words of the elders and the prophets that came before you. But one day, the morning star will rise in your heart, and you'll have your own source of revelation, or your own direct gnosis. But that word morning star, they translated from the Latin word Lucifer. So imagine if they had left that in there, and that passage was like, You have to rely on the words of the elders and the priests and such until such time as Lucifer rises in your own heart, and then you'll know for yourself.
Yeah.
That's the meaning of the word.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't have the same kind of folklore built up around the word Lucifer as you have now, I bet, if that particular passage in Second Peter wasn't translated from the Latin and left as the word Lucifer.
Jeremy, well, which one is the devil?
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
Exactly.
Depends on what you mean by the word devil, I suppose.
Exactly, right? But I mean, people often refer to Satan, Lucifer, and then they lump the devil in there.
So let's talk about the biblical
The biblical
devil.
sort of. Yeah, biblically speaking.
Yes.
So Satan in Christianity, Satan would be the devil, I guess. But the thing is, the devil really is a Christian concept. You have figures that guard the underworld or rule over the underworld, but they're not necessarily considered devils. They're dark and people are generally afraid of them, like let's say for instance Hades or Pluto or any one of these gods that ruled over the underworld, right? Ereshkigal. But they weren't necessarily the devil, the adversary of the creator. They had their function, their role. They would rule over the underworld, these various different figures and different mythologies around the world, but they weren't necessarily the adversary of God. That's kind of it's a Zoroastrian concept, which got later developed in Manichaeanism, Gnosticism, version of Gnosticism, where Manichaeanism was very dualist. And you have, people hear about Gnosticism. That's not one monolithic thing. There were a bunch of different versions of Gnosticism. Some of them were very dualistic and fundamentalist, you could say, where even the Cathars, which I'm sure you've heard of, they believed in a very literal interpretation of it, very dualistic, and they felt that procreating was to cooperate with the Demiurge. In Gnosticism, the devil would be the creator god.
Okay.
Great. So my spawn is the devil.
My spawn.
Creator god is the devil, and the rebel or trickster character is the savior. And that would be Lucifer. So in some versions, you could say that Satan is like the adversary of humanity, right? Humanity's freedom, and that would be the Demiurge or the creator god in Gnosticism. And that would be the devil. And the trickster, rebellious trickster character, like Prometheus or the serpent in Eden, would be the savior character. Not exactly a savior character, but somebody to emulate, and somebody who not only freed themselves or figured out how to free themselves, but they also shared that knowledge with the rest of us so that we could also free ourselves from the demiurge, vampiric, samsaric cycle of reincarnation, where we're trapped in this prison planet, being fed upon our energies as we generate energies from getting caught up in the storyline. And so this is the idea. There's this creator god that is a flawed character and wants to keep us trapped, and he feeds off of the energies that we generate through just existing and getting caught up in the storyline of everything.
Yeah.
Reacting to it. If we get angry, they feed off of that. The demiurge and his angels, which are called archons. And then so they're feeding off of our energies, and they're kind of provoking us into different energy states that they can feed off of, whether that be love, whether that be anger, whether that be any of these emotional states that we get triggered into generating or experiencing.
That's interesting. Yeah.
In some circles, the jargon is that they feed off our loosh.
Our loosh.
That's a shorthand for all of the various emotional energies that we generate. Having a dream and you think it's real. You don't realize it's a dream. It's a non-lucid dream. You're caught up in the storyline, the narrative of it, and you're reacting to all the various different things. If a monster runs at you, you're like, holy shit, there's a real monster here coming after me. I better
Yeah.
right? And you're running and you're scared, or you turn around and you start trying to fight, all of these things generate loosh, right? If we become lucid of the situation, the lucid has the same root word as Lucifer, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So if we become aware we're in a dream, then if a monster comes at us, we're not nearly as triggered, right? You still get freaked out or whatever, but you know that this is a dream and that it doesn't really matter if they come and maul you to death or whatever. It doesn't even matter, right?
Yeah.
You don't get triggered into freaking out and running away or fighting them or anything. Like, you actually will just be more curious and you'll be like, oh, okay, well, what's this thing about, right? Like, and what does this monster represent about my own psyche, that I'm dreaming it? And it could change your whole perspective on it. And that's kind of where I am with waking life, you could call it, so-called waking.
Yeah.
Is I believe that what we refer to as a waking life is just another level or a different type of dream.
Yeah, exactly. It just
That's scary.
It is scary, and there's a lot of people that aren't awake.
One of the interesting things is that in a dream, the more that you can realize or be aware that you are in a dream and the implications of that. So, I've done a lot of lucid dreaming in my life, and I would sometimes have a very high level of awareness that I'm in a dream.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily fully understand the implications of that. And so I wouldn't have as much power over the dream as other times later on when I started figuring more things out about it. I know a lot of people, when they first start doing lucid dreaming, they will use it for wish fulfillment, or they'll get in fights with things. A monster will come and they'll just completely destroy it or something, right?
Yeah.
And you start thinking about, wait a minute, what is the implication of it? If everything I'm experiencing in this dream represents a part of my own psyche, which seems logical because your own mind is generating it, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so if you start to understand, wait a minute, this is a part of my own psyche. So me just destroying it, what does that symbolize? What does that represent? Thinking about these things. Like, well, wait a minute. Maybe I could learn about it, understand it, figure out if this entity, this dream character, is being malevolent towards the dream character that I'm currently representing or experiencing the dream through. Then that means that there's a part of my psyche that is suppressed, or strange from my own sense of who I am. And it's flashing out because it wants attention, it wants integration, right? It wants representation. And so you try and figure out, you can have a conversation with it, you can have an interaction with that dream character, and you can uncover something about yourself that you had been suppressing, perhaps. A shadow.
It's like telling a person to view the world and take the physicality out of it. Think beyond the physical sort of aspect of your life. And think about, or try to envision, what is left without the physicality of it. Things that you learn, and when you're saying, like, the awareness when you're, in a dream state. Are we actually aware of being in a dream state now? Are we actually in a dream state? Are we actually awake? Yeah, we are awake. We're awake in our dream state.
Right. And the thing is, when you've had enough lucid dreams, you start to realize that the part of your mind that's generating the dreaming experience is the same part of the mind that's generating the waking experience. Just using a different set of input. We're not experiencing reality directly right now. we're experiencing an internally generated symbolic representation presented to our consciousness in form of a fully immersive experience. But there's no red in reality, you know?
Yeah.
Red has meaning in the context of an observer, an experiencer. It's a meaningful pattern that we have identified that is meaningful to us in our own survival. It's a concept. Red is a concept. It doesn't exist in reality other than in our consciousness. So the reason why you believe that a dream is real when you're in it, generally, is because it's the same function of the mind that's generating that dreaming experience as the function of the mind that also generates the waking experience. It's just in the waking experience, you're getting an input of data that's coming from what we refer to within the waking experience as our physical sense organs, right? And that's those physical sense organs that we're referring to are part of the simulation, are part of the dream that we call the waking experience. So it's just what we refer to that data source. We don't really know what it is.
Explain the experience.
Right. So we could be a brain in a vat.
Yeah.
Like the Matrix, right?
Yeah.
They're not getting their data through physical sense organs. But in the simulation, it appears that they are. Just like in a dream.
Yeah.
When you're asleep and having the dreaming experience, or the asleep dreaming experience, you will touch something and you'll feel it in the dream. Or you'll look at something and you'll think that light is getting into your eye.
Yeah.
Right? But is light getting into your eye? And is it being processed in your brain? No, it's just being generated.
It's just being generated,
in your mind, right? There's no eye. That eyeball is part of the dream itself, just like right now. Right now, when we're awake, it's the same thing. That's not an eyeball.
Wait a sec, let me just check. Yeah, exactly.
That light goes into that's how we experience it.
Yeah.
The experience that's being generated internally. Just like in a dream, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more persistent waking experience than in the dreaming experience. And so there are different kind of ways that we can work with that. But we still are thinking of, like, if you're in a dream, right, and you cut open your head, or there's a brain there, right, and you start fiddling with it, and you might even experience a change in your perception within the dream. But is that data really being processed through that brain that you're fiddling with in your head? Or is it being generated on a higher dimension? Right?
Yeah.
It is. When you wake up, you realize, oh yeah, there was no brain there that was being fiddled with. It was all being generated by my physical brain here in the waking world, right? Or so we think at the time, right? I think that's a misnomer as well. I think there's some sort of mind on a higher dimension that's generating these experiences that we're having here, which we perceive as being data coming in from our sense organs, right? But that is part of that simulation. The sense organs, the physical, all that physical stuff, it's a simulation.
see, this is why we want you back on for a full show.
So one of the things that H.P. Lovecraft does is he provides us with certain metaphors that we can use to discuss, like some of these concepts. So he has this god that he refers to as a thought.
As a thought?
Yeah.
It's the god that's dreaming our waking experience.
Mm-hmm. We are basically a construct of his dreaming.
We are characters within the dream that as a thought is having. And the thing is that he's referred to as a blind idiot god.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, I believe, is because, do you consciously generate your dream when you go to sleep and dream?
No.
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 Half the time, or more than half the time, you don't even realize that it is a dream, right?
Yeah.
You dream it, and the dream arises. You don't consciously craft that, right? And half the time, you're not even aware that it's a dream thing on a higher level, right? So, I feel like us becoming aware of the waking dream is bringing lucidity to Azathoth, in a sense, to use that technology. Now, there's another character that is interesting within the Cthulhu mythos, and that would be Nylar.
You're lots of tap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
He's like the
believe
gatekeeper.
a lucid character within Azathoth's dream, like a really high level of lucidity. So that's a character within Azathoth's dream that has come to a really high level of realization that it's a dream within Azathoth's dream. And like yourself, when you are in a lucid dream, you become godlike, right? You can do all kinds of things that would normally you just seconds before you became lucid. Like, let's say the dream started out non-lucid, right?
Yeah.
And became lucid within the dream. Suddenly, all kinds of things become possible that just 5 seconds ago you thought were literally impossible. Now they're possible, easy even. You know, you
Yeah.
can fly. Just start flying if you want, right?
Yeah.
If you attain lucidity within a dream.
So Jamie's asking, what do dreams mean then?
The dream is the symbolic representation of meaningful patterns in a data set that we are receiving. So there's two main channels, you could say, almost like a radio, right?
Mhm.
So there is what we've been referring to during this conversation as the waking experience.
Yeah.
That is a channel that we refer to or we perceive as being a data set coming in from our physical sense organ. And the other channel is the astral or the dream, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That is when the experience is a symbolic representation of meaningful patterns found within presumably internal non-physical data, memories, according to science, random firings within the brain, random firings within it's maybe a signal from some other place.
You've got a storm going on there.
Yeah, so that could actually be like a receiver receiving a signal from another dimension, you could say.
Interesting. Yeah. Another dimension. Yeah.
And so that we're processing that data. And when our brain finds meaningful patterns within that data, it generates a symbolic representation of it and presents it to the conscious mind as an experience. And that's the same whether it's from the physical data stream or the astral data stream. And you can even tune your radio halfway between the two. Have you ever experienced sleep paralysis?
Yeah. Yeah. You haven't, Alex? I thought you said you did.
Have you ever
Not
had?
sleep paralysis, not me.
Oh.
Have you ever heard of old hag?
Old
Yep.
hag. Yeah. They all. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's basically when you kind of wake up, but you're still kind of half in the dream,
Mm-hmm.
and you will be able to, perceive things with your physical sense organs that are coming from the waking experience. But also, there's something else there too that you're experiencing. Part of the astral signal is bleeding in as well, like a crosstalk. And you see a figure sitting on the edge of your bed or on your chest.
Yeah.
And that's old hag. And that's one of those in between liminal states or a bardo, right? Between the two channels.
Oh, that is cool. Awesome. Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, thanks for letting me jump on.
Oh, for sure.
Awesome, Jeremy. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care.
Have a good one.
Take
night.
care, everyone. Yeah, we're going to cut this. Take care, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening.
Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.